Raklay, marbekal bugul belan ngartiang. Diregal maluil tuta present ra Senate, marbekal senators, vice speaker, marbekal delegates. Rira bodomule donitra senator sungino mulwadi mo openera. Meeting ra bang lu adam sulang.
tatal ekle dolulu dam el dios ngayang dolola ba bekal klisi ngayang dama utma da marugultu alsel agi tero benda mirubak el dios mal meringa sulem liak langar kamam kiurenga sulem girela blumam urenga sulem girela teal el mosabam lu tongok ya ada dul girela gel el baglela blumam agi ol trokra kamam mirubak el dios tal el dadu o siga lom sering raga argau mereptel merbek la adam kim kay ngasul som ekli ayel ko el bagala mer alsis ayo urenga sulem liblo ol ultro ko ramam lega ankla di tanang liam Jesus Kristus nyara le klemrang klagar o seblam el muarar amen.
Maluil tuta. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. Raklay kulumra lo ase tial longit ngara blur amrigel may agire del pekla adrbela motmagem saadari mang kada kadogora amlar amia obisir kami mak le bas kami tial uldasol le longit ngara amrigel may tiram ladr duru kliser gora wal lon trir ngara babier mesengara ladrusi makom la mesang ay gal tablol blay mang dire kam lang osusil babier ma gora mokte gra meeting er gidre lang akne askar ambassador me man se drogi rangi dil gerel selon tri ablo amregel mergid gadman mongil mamala mokte gartir ngara igel nia selol ngitri of course tiga olito ase dambre del signer tiang tiga kam lamo ase tede kalse dambre del sani tiga gira del adrbela giraman مساعدني مويل مدلل واسنغرا رايجل كلون يولل رايجل كنتيل even selgi mama senira the way it's written ang agira ngari an mutal improvement tan moral sel ding le soadal qora ngate al relal bay maskami ate al maqdo mal mongil maqatakli and maybe Ambassador we could start off with you just sharing the intent, what we're trying to accomplish here, and then I asked for the leadership meeting so that it's an open forum, open discussion where any senator, any chief delegate can ask questions of clarification, so that we're all on the same page, so we understand what this agreement is all about. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, let me say, Ungil Tutau, good morning. Ungil morning to everybody, traditional leaders, members of the Senate, members of the delegates from the House. It's an honor for me to be here. What we're talking about, what this agreement is asking, we're asking a number of countries around the world to enter into a cooperation agreement with the United States for how we are able to handle those seeking asylum in the United States. So essentially what we're asking for, to give a little bit of context. So right now we have a problem with the numbers of people claiming asylum in the United States. If you land in the United States, anyone can claim asylum, and we have a backlog of over 1 million people. And the asylum hearings to adjudicate those cases are backed up more than 5 years. During that 5-year time frame, people are allowed to work and live legally in the United States. They can sometimes, in some cases, start families, and their children would be U.S. citizens. And this administration feels that a number of those people are abusing our immigration system, that they come to the United States not because they fear persecution for race or political affiliation in their home country, but they're trying to game the U.S. system and stay there as long as they can or permanently, not as asylees, refugees by definition, but because they're trying to game the U.S. system. So what we're asking for with this agreement is for countries that would be willing to have a discussion in the future about accepting those asylum seekers from the United States. This first agreement is just the framework that says, yes, we would be willing to have another discussion later on specific individuals. This agreement does not commit Palau to take any people at this time. It does not require Palau to even say yes in the future. It's just a framework for what we would use to discuss the possibility of asylum seekers being relocated here in the future. And the way this works in the U.S. System is so in the future, an asylum seeker in the United States, if the United States would choose, we would be able to say to that person, we don't think your claim is valid. You have the choice now of returning to your home country, or a country such as Palau has agreed that they would be willing to consider taking you. It is our assessment that most of those people would choose to return to their home country, but those who would not want that then would have an option of going to a place like Palau or one of the other countries. And I just want to emphasize, this is, again, what we're talking about today is the framework agreement, and Palau would have the right to refuse or accept whoever they wanted in the future. And I'm willing to take any questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Ambassador. President from Sulara Tel Teal. I have only one question for now. What you talk in this document, it says refugee, and you mentioned about asylum. Are these two words same? Are we talking about the same people? Asylum
for
and
the
refugees.
purposes, yes.
So, are these people, when if we decide to have them come in, how deep vetting the U.S. side government has done in vetting these people who are coming in to Palau, assuming that we're going to accept them?
So thank you, and let me just preface this by saying I'm not an immigration lawyer, so there might be nuances to this that I'd have to refer back to our legal people. But in answer to your question, yes, we're talking about the same thing: asylum seekers and refugees. The United States will have vetted them. We're talking about people who have not had their asylum hearings yet in the United States, that are awaiting their asylum hearings. So in terms of vetting them, they've applied for asylum. They've stated they fear persecution if they return to their homeland. And I think if we're talking practically about what would this mean for Palau, we would have the chance to further vet them before Palau would be considering them. So, for example, if the person had a criminal background, Palau would know that before you'd be asked to accept them. Or maybe you'd be asked, but you'd be able to say, we don't want anybody with a criminal background, so we refuse, in this instance, accepting that person.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that question is that just this morning, I went through internet and I learned that in Georgia, Atlanta, there were some asylum seekers from South Africa, and most of them were all white Afrikaners. And the reason for especially Atlanta, city of Atlanta, accepting those asylum seekers is because they were mostly well-to-do families because of apartheid problem in South Africa. And the state of Georgia, Atlanta city in this case, wanted them to come in because they were probably well-to-do family, rich people. So the reason why I asked this question is that we don't know who these refugees or asylum seekers that you want allowed to accept. We have no way of vetting. Our government, I think, President, we can tell you, we have no way of vetting what kind of people that these are. So we have to rely on U.S. government to clearly vet these people so that we don't get people who are not should be welcomed into Palau.
Right. Okay. Good. I understand. Thank you for that clarification. So in that event of what you're talking about, not knowing the background of the people, not being able to vet them, that would be what would occur. Palau would have ample opportunity to vet in that second phase of this process. What we're talking about today is just the first phase where Palau would be agreeing to the framework for accepting or refusing people in the future, and that would be a separate discussion. So in the event of like you were describing, if Palau was not satisfied, felt that the person was not fully vetted, that we don't know enough about this person in that second phase, Palau could just simply refuse and say, no, we don't accept them. We're not comfortable accepting that person, this group of people.
Thank you, Ambassador. I just wanted to kind of clarify in my mind how this would work, and I actually did a little sketch on my piece of paper listening to what you said. So when this asylum seeker tries to get asylum into the United States, because of its backlog, then presents them with an option to either go home or come to a third country, in this case being Palau, to continue the asylum process for entry into the United States. This is what I was trying to understand. So is this process strictly for a temporary housing of an individual waiting for that process to be completed in the United States, or is this process that individual choosing to, we would now, Palau as a country, have to accept their asylum claim into Palau? That's kind of what I wanted to be clear on.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The answer, as far as I understand, the laws has been explained to me, is these are people awaiting their hearing, and we would be notifying them that we don't believe that they have a valid asylum claim, and we're giving them the option then pre-hearing to return to their country or to a third country, in this case Palau. And then at that point, they have Palau just accepts them. They're no longer in the U.S. They're no longer seeking asylum in the United States. So then it would be up to Palau with how to handle them, permanent residence or whatever.
So, as a follow-up to my question and your answer, so this individual is no longer qualified to enter the United States with their asylum claim, and they're being provided the option to seek asylum in the third country, being Palau, and Palau would have to bear housing, immigration, or whatever we need to do as a country to deal with that individual. Is that correct?
So let me make sure I'm not getting too far into Palau's laws, because I understand Palau is not an asylum, not a member of the UN. So it's up to Palau to decide what the status of the person would be. They would no longer be seeking asylum in the United States. And in terms of housing or any other financial support or whatever that the U.S. might provide, that would again be part of that second phase of this agreement. So the first one is just the framework, And then the second one, you know, it might be a different conversation if we're asking Palau to take 5 people or if we're asking Palau to take 50. You know, there might be ample housing concerns or whatever. So those kinds of details would be in the second phase.
So, if I could continue, just to clarify in my mind, the process for asylum in the United States would have been ended, and these individuals will now start that process into Palau. So, if we choose to accept them, is that correct?
The process in the U.S. would have ended, and then Palau. The one thing that's in the agreement, I think everybody's been given a copy. Palau would, you know, decide what the status would be, but the one guarantee Palau makes is to provide protection or whatever. So the persecution the individual feels they are still safe from.
So I'm asking these questions because I think a lot of us are familiar with what's going on in Nauru in relation to how they're dealing with asylum seekers with Australia. And what's happening in Nauru is it's a temporary holding facility where those individuals are determined by the Australian government whether or not to enter Australia or to return to their country of origin. This case, it's a little different.
It's different.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear.
Morning, Ambassador. So it's important because I think initially when you started talking, we were under the assumption after listening to you that it was those individuals who were seeking asylum. The backlog is 5 years to get an option to come to Palau and then continuing their asylum claims. That was the impression, but I think it's clear that those who are given that option to come to Palau is where their claims or their requests have been denied. And then they're given 2 options, come to Palau or another third country, or go to your home country. So their requests have been denied, then they're given 2 options, third country or go back home.
Their requests have not been denied in the United States. They're still awaiting their hearings.
So that's why I wanted to clarify. That's what I heard you from the get-go, from the beginning. And I think based on my notes, there's over 1 million people who are seeking asylum in the United States. The backlog is 5 years. While they're seeking asylum, they're allowed to stay in the United States. Your administration says you're taking advantage of this backlog by having children, seeking work and not even continuing with your claims. And so we need to find a third country for you to go to or go back home and continue your application. That's what I understood from your first.
Okay.
Senator Whipson was talking about. Then I kind of heard you, or I was under the assumption that now it's denied, their application is denied, go to Palau or go home.
Yeah, and I don't want to mislead on like legal interpretation, so I'd have to get clarification on the word denied and all. But their choice would be to leave their choice is to leave the United States either to their home country or to a third country such as Palau. And it's my impression reading the materials that they are therefore abandoning their asylum claim, but I'm going to have to get the legal answer for you. Actually, you've talked to them now? Okay. Okay, yeah, absolutely. A very important point. We'll get you clarification.
Mogel. Sama Logel.
So, I think, I'm not a lawyer, but I think our constitution or our laws do not allow us to accept asylum seekers. When they come, they go to that church and stay there until they go back home. So when these asylum seekers come from the United States, what is their status here? How do we? Is that for us to decide?
Their status is for you to decide, and I do know in the discussions we've had in the past few days, I've come to learn that Palau is not, a member of the UN Asylum Convention. I'm not getting the term right, and so to make this request match U.S. law, what we would be seeking is from the countries that we're asking, pursuing an asylum claim, or this would be applicable to Palau, equivalent temporary protection in a third country. So you would not be providing asylum protection, you'd be providing equivalent temporary protection, meaning that the person would not face persecution for their race, political affiliation, and those criteria in the UN Convention. Does that make sense?
If I could follow up. So they are being sent to Palau or a third country because their claims have been denied, and the third country, i.e. Palau, would have to accept them based on this agreement, well, through our own vetting process. What about the cost implications? Is this all on us, or they initially came to the United States to seek asylum?
Yeah.
We've
So
kind of helped you get rid of that problem. Well, helped you with that situation. How does this all work?
So, well, first, the claims haven't been denied, from what I understand. The claims are still pending a hearing, but we're asking them to return to their home country or third country. But then, in terms of the financial implications and all that, that would be a direct discussion in that second phase, and that it would be at that time Palau would say, we can't do this unless we get money for housing, or we can't do this if it's somebody that needs to, go to a prison because we don't have the room in the prison. So those are kind of a negotiation, if you will, that would take place in that second round.
Ambassador, here. Good morning. I was just wondering about the pending claims, assuming that there is an agreement and claims are still pending in the U.S. and there is an agreement that the asylum seekers whose claims are still pending will be transferred to Palau. Will those pending claims also be transferred to Palau?
My understanding is no, but I think that kind of relates to this other question, so I'm going to have to get a final definitive answer for you.
Ali, thank you for the opportunity. Yes, so we're talking about the pending claims. Well, in a scenario where they come here in Palau, we accept them that they come, and they abandon their claims or fail to seek the protection that U.S. has provided, and then it goes back to the Palau side to decide on their fate. If they decide to abandon their claims or fail to seek the protection in the United States.
So I'm not sure. So your question is the same as that? Like, what's the status in the U.S.?
No, when the asylum seekers come to Palau, if we decide
Oh, I
to
see.
accept them in Palau, and they come here and they decide to abandon their claim in the U.S. or fail to seek protection in the U.S. and they just decide to stay here, and it's part of the agreement that our obligations to take care of them.
Right. So if they have abandoned their claim in the United States, it's up to Palau what status they would have here.
I'm just curious because we don't accept asylum claims here. We're not part of the UN. So can we charter a C-130 and then just send them home after that? This is just a,
I think the answer to that is, well, I mean, it's
their home country. So this is just a question I have is, the U.S. has to do this because they're a member of that convention and they have to follow those rules. The reason we end up with asylum seekers at the Catholic Mission is we have no funding to send them home. But if we have funding to send them home, we send them here and then we send them home because we don't follow that UN convention.
The text of the, I'm trying to look at the actual text right now. The one thing that Palau would agree to is to offer protection, equivalent temporary protection in the third country. So
sending them home would not be
you would not, you would need to provide equivalent protection.
even though we're not a member.
Even though you're not a member. That's why we changed the language. For other countries that are members of that UN Convention on Refugees, they're agreeing to the actual text of the convention. For Palau, we would change the wording so we wouldn't attach it to the convention itself, but Palau would agree to equivalent protections. But it would not have to be asylum seeking.
But if we determine that they're not really at risk at home, we could send them home.
To their
If they have to go back
country
to
of origin.
Honduras, they can go back to Honduras.
President, we cannot send them back because they're running away from their country. And U.S. is not going to send. If they can send them back, U.S. can send them back to their home country.
If they agree, we would send them back, yeah.
Yes, but I don't think they will agree to go back because they'll be killed or something, right?
Well, again, it's the opinion of this administration that not all of these asylum seekers have an what's the word I'm looking for? Well-founded fear of persecution, that they are taking advantage of U.S. asylum laws. So it's the opinion of this administration that, given the choice, many of these people would return to their home country as opposed to being sent, if you're from Latin America, you know, far away from your home to a place like Palau.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, I saw and heard in a CNN report that there were some asylum seekers, and what's the name of that group? MS-13. They were sent back not to their home country but to El Salvador, because El Salvador accepted them and put them right into the jail, about 200 of them. So that's, I think, to me, that's my concern. You send these people, unvetted asylum seekers, to come to Palau, and we rely on you, U.S., to make sure they're nice people, not troublemakers. So that's, to me, that's my concern.
Understandable. And I think the good news about this is a separate procedure, separate program from what you saw in the news. This is this would give Palau, first of all, it doesn't call on Palau to make any obligations to take a certain number or to take a certain class of asylum seekers, Palau would have the right of refusal, as I put it, before they would take anyone. It would be, up to Palau to decide who to approve.
Malungil 2000 meron kami rokoy. I'm sorry nga ka. I'm a little bit a sore throat. Okay, so the bottom line is that if we accept them, you will give them to us, period. And that'll be our problem, period. That's the bottom line. Okay, second, during the convention from 1928 all the way to 51, 64, 87, still the same. The only thing that says that they will not accept criminals. If you accept refugees or asylum, they will not accept criminals. Now, how would we know they're not criminals? Are you going to provide us their history, that they're not criminals? Because we don't have that facility or that technology to pull theirs and say you're criminals. So, to me, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm pretty new delegate. I think we're in the pressure that if you don't accept them, we might not get what we're asking for from the United States. I don't know if I'm the only one feeling that. We're in the spot where you say, you take it or we don't. That's my feeling.
Okay, I can, I think, help alleviate some of those concerns. This is completely separate from any other assistance that we're offering, the COFA, anything else, this is a separate issue. So we would not hold future funding from Palau at all. But in terms of the criminals and Palau feeling it didn't have enough information on the individual, if that were the case, Palau could always say no to whoever we were suggesting. Palau is not obligated under this framework agreement to take anybody, and there will be a second phase where we can have a much deeper discussion on who would come. And in the you said, if Palau takes somebody, it becomes Palau's problem. In the way I foresee this playing out, Palau would have the right to negotiate with the United States. So whoever would come here would not be a problem. Like I was saying before, if Palau feels the need to ask for money to house these people, that could be part of a future negotiation. If Palau feels that, this person looks like a criminal, it's not somebody we want in our country, Palau would have the right to say no.
El presidente te queda back. Aldo aya egorgal bot. A cloud nga kasi kitam lagi dro meeting. Lobong game marubul belau. Digit. Makadam lita tel tokora drong let. Ul trokra aldo. Le segit sel kot trenting iltiang. El agadam la imul murstel sa ta selong erul trenting iltiang. Ya pa biniaman mlay. Akhirnya telah abang dikit, abulu abal wak, maka ma abang le ada tu, elangkal ada mata bulan apa datang arti kata am tu uringi, oitisel el banglet, segida kotuk teli, yak mau lihat ke orang kamu minister ngarti la oidit yang, hale, presidente,
hale senator hale, tik betul lah imurat tu. Ngaga amle askra meeting el memsaader tial agreement ngan mabal edegal sogalo marta ngidil toy makwa adani lutra babiel memskid mone atte elad logera yel mul sad loger lobengel emo merge mara legita adu lendegal sogal ngari alwid maluben togol telil degal ngia mil dora adra mergel mergid sea moktek malagal lagal borranu dro sengara ulengal adangartia kada kal ngartia al tamil de mega decision ngartiang dia mengetak clarifying idil gel dolap mereka mereka el mereka lagi tak ada tu Okay?
Saul tira. E ungi mga artiang ala adam kuling terka minister mo di tial morni. Kuk trial kutungan tril ave e bolo dengei luas e bela dia kalong opitrar af. Sira soka duli platak.
Me kulit gibom say. Ako takam saul senator tabal til altoy. Teatra dire kum de soal duli. Ter mama rupul belaw. Ako te president agi merenga sulem. Tial lordong el mel. Lualo swal wasetial issue metial paletsil ngal madat. Meliu raw rulir adar belaw rogui mal atari mai girera leadership belaw mutmak. Agi merenga sulem el mal aswar say. Sera about little over 1 week ago, yung wablel katingin man memitra rupul belaw kulu ay setial lontri adra mirigel alwida kam lemitra adra olvira kululaw. Masel mle aldu ul koram le telbira dulong le da se. Como mister adra mirigel ermeng saigel lontri eme kadamo addu ul gugoter kla sponsor gidel mo. Magi yo basel toy bladela senator tablual. Agi wag lagi betek metiang emerkong emang adu lo penggela ambassador American. Nengaregel bebira toil guk kwadi attera da adu di prongelet aru bugul belaw ma obisa president mar adro olbira kulula. Al ngari akrama ma concern rama magik burkaw e kama da mamel mor American mu telsira bira ko makail trete. Sel de pertiar lagi mogera ken malube ko top da do sound American en madgora mo anti-US malube ko korang wal da atol. So I think it's a little bit premature. El blad vertial to agrid. Edir ko swad el moment ng detail engal adra Miguel lang artia. But having said that, reactive hombre rin to kar adra dil sorry mo moy. Al do so marubugul belaw ma cook response sa randira adra belaw el alsils. Abay kloar raw ren artir, masebek ren artir, madakal sorir tial toil ba adasis ba alsil. Mengaraled el mu telki titi tiang el mo ngira rendia other bela lo ase tiang ngara ul makata even thinking about moving forward with it. At this point tetangay ka rogul toy ma concern sirgid ma question sirgid mo all batabel. Ako kul do sama sing club redela kantil matal maler ragel whatever boda tangay. Gida da kaltid el salila pa Amerigel. Ang algeda surbra US military magitial brula ayel ledal mong emay. Itiayid mo oado asylum refugee shelter home ra arada lokoto artira merigere oltob der tilmay malo bangario reng Mr. President. Dia kalungil mergida other belaw at this time. Katas liam Miguel di agyo umbral wasi tiang sabe edel bura Miguel wasi dia kal soma malame malakado sa da gayidel wasi alber kamambe bolakal sabi il mengoy titri lagi makarartir udo dergera mo tial problem el al arngia Malaysia maorngia tokol megrel belura Afrika regal maorngia naoru ayel gridel doger tiang adira kabolungil blakatakla enser ngi rayel mladu ray gayidel belu Akting maal da akal metiang ya o tise Google do sama Google belal wasi. Ulgu mengarang ang dimle setiap dari recommendation ko mam gukti ako ko wasi. Mo do ulgirel di gel. Sebab kamam ma concern kamam ada kal songap tial kletal al sis rabluat. Global tamali rabol kat bekli. Ay kita di sokal mo.
كده قطرول هذا من أسكر ميتين بس المصادرين ما تنقبوا ذو سنجري المقلوات اللي جري المم تنجري روي exactly أولن قال أدان أرتيا من with all due respect I disagree with تيال approach رغاو أو the swim كمية أرتيا روغول بلاو من سيم دا سيقوم تيرا روغول بلا قدمنا روغول بلا مقاقرو سول the swim مسيم دا سيقوم تيرتير أدغال جري من لو سيقوم تيرتير Katara rubukul belaw, mak respect ra opinion ako. Dikit sila adadu ngara fact ngara a transparent process. Awala kinung kala adal may aso adal make sure wase ngari atele adal oger agen. Kita de adal toba da decision kita wase kada gongin diak. Kada mala the sweeter back lab lahigel career matamo understand wase ngara only ting amrigel eng toba dal maral kita adadu. Degi sa kantil sel toy. So also mamla modek
Sabi
age
rong siya, dusuya malgira laikal.
also mamla modek agari del moran kala ambassador en sedel mena marael egida adadu
Diak, tilay kita sa dal direct rong si. Dito ko rin Mr. President. Dimla ka to el mel wasya next elbo damit ka to bangkela ambassador Amerigel. Sige kita sa dal kat clean merkaw. Kamamlel mo kasi ngarat dilur adal Amerigel le korkaw. Mako ay sirgi de kat adadu adal ngole dal mo madange ekalmutan may kal karmam
mangal adara Amerigel ang artiang el diwa hindi ka balukul ku ngutak la to el me ku miskamiw ngartiam kadak mer momabla katak ikata mer mamara lagi tam sao mendia ka rarong durase ngaran dilu president awaner al dilu ambassador Amerigel saya asador mo katak ring we want to be transparent saya amle mokte ke merko.
Okay, aktidulit yal wasa nga labi birat koy el kora kadmo matang okla. Yawa umungul mo Amerigel nung jakal dal ng okot segid. Ember ko in fact ay gagil da adu relang ado ring lo si ulgu man jakal ngartiang ambasador. Isip ya da adu ni mokra no le.
Hal atol ulang way sa dal time kamil masadri. Mlewin la discussion lol mol mloger ager e bol Amerigel sel marahel. Saya amle moktek. Madigari gari la wasal sum la modega ager en sedel mere mumra la mo
Mututa, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. Just a question on, I think in this room there's about more than 110% that we are all pro-US. There's no denying that. Now here's the concern. With your presence and on this proposal, just by this invitation and this gathering, we feel the pressure. And the question is, if there's a difference in the community and the majority of people wish not to entertain this proposal, would the United States use our independent decision out of respect of the United States? Would you use that against the Republic of Palau?
Absolutely not. And I like the way you started the question. This is all, we've come to Palau with this request because we are such close partners, right? We've gone around the world, I get instructions, the embassy gets instructions from Washington. Many of our embassies receive the same instructions. Check with your country to see if they'd be interested in joining with us. This would have if Palau was to say no to this, there would be absolutely zero negative ramifications for Palau. The people who are in Washington who sent me these instructions, they said, this is the last paragraph in what they sent, and the points that they wanted me to make to you was, this is an excellent opportunity to be our partner on an issue of great importance to the White House. We would consider it a demonstration of friendship if you assist in this manner. So nothing like, if you don't do it, we're going to, take away over here. This is all about, Palau trying to assist the United States on an issue that is of great importance to this administration.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much, Kumsulang, for that statement. You said it, and then again, if we so decide that we're not comfortable with this, please understand it's because of social issues and the impact of our community and maybe other issues. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you for that. And I would just throw this out there. I would say, I would hope that we could, at a minimum, sign this framework agreement that says Palau would be open to considering, further. And it's in that second phase where Palau can say no to anything that it doesn't agree to. But if Palau says no to signing this framework agreement, then the possibility of future discussions goes away. No harm, no foul, right?
Tuta President Marvick Lade. Come le dam lo singire del mutual lo message agreement and require some improvement lang ngalinga ko other la lo message setia togolinga dia kala clean mergi. I just want clarification on the earlier statement you made that so there are like over millions of people that have been seeking asylum with the U.S. And because of the 5 years, some of them have waited for 5 years. So the idea to have this agreement, like what you said, this is just a framework, will make Palau like an option destination for these people while they're waiting for their case or they have been denied. They can seek asylum here in Palau. And that will be up to the government and the leadership of Palau to approve if these guys are able to come to Palau. I just want to clear.
Right. From what I understand, they wouldn't be seeking asylum in Palau because Palau doesn't grant asylum, but they would be seeking to be relocated. Instead of returning to their home country, they would come to Palau.
So when they come to Palau, they're looking to be relocated, which Palau will be an option destination for them because of their case. They've been pending in U.S. for a long time, and the idea was that Palau will be one in the list that if any of these refugees are seeking asylum in U.S., Palau will be an option for them, but it will require approval from the government of Palau and leadership.
Correct. Palau would have
and any details as far as anyone to apply for Palau will be provided by the U.S. government as far as their background check.
Correct.
To make sure that these people are not a risk to the government of Palau and people of Palau.
Correct.
Okay. I just want clarification on it.
President, ang Rosel Molu selmeng mungila babilgem. Maktel ome serengi engulu ase ditrigel ngaram brigele tigal refugee ma only the ones in the US asking for asylum. And I was looking at the agreement. It doesn't say in the US or the one in FSM or the one in other country that who is going to be under protection of the US and you're going to tell them from somewhere around the world to come to Palau. It doesn't say, but this one looks like it's an open asylum, not only the one from the US that you're going to send them to Palau, but also if somebody from one of the country in the Europe or Africa and require protection of the US, and then you just from there and you send that person to Palau. I just want that clarification.
So,
please.
So what this is, to answer your question, what this is that we're asking for is called an STCA, Safe Third Country Agreement. And so when we talk with one of the asylum seekers in the United States, and the U.S. government suggests to them that their claim will not be approved. Then what we want to do is offer them the choice to go home to their country of origin, or we would ask one of these countries who have agreed to a STCA, a third country agreement, if they would be willing to consider taking that person. If the country is willing to consider, then we'd have that talk that others have alluded to, where we would where Palau could ask, does the person have any criminal background? Does the person have any any other concerns? And that would be a second round of discussions. And at that point, Palau could always say, we don't want that person. We don't accept them. And the U.S. would move on to other possibilities. Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about seeking asylum at U.S. embassies outside of the U.S. I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question.
Because I see the agreement.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say the refugee in the U.S. only.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
president's letter say it's a refugee in the U.S. seeking asylum.
Yeah.
And I know there are some that gonna need protection, and the
At
U.S.
embassies.
gonna help them, and then you're gonna move them from other countries to Palau. That was
Yeah.
my question.
Okay.
Other than the one in the U.S.
I see what you're saying. Sorry. I'm mostly sure. I'll double check. I'm mostly sure this only applies to those who are in the U.S. right now in that process of awaiting their hearing.
I know, but in the agreement it doesn't say
Right.
in
Okay.
the U.S. That's why I was going to say.
Okay,
Can you
good.
please put in the U.S.
Got it. Good. Thank you for that.
Clear.
Now I'm really confused. You said this asylum that was not approved by United States? You
It's
said
still
that.
pending.
No, I wrote it down. These are not been approved by United States.
Not yet approved by the United States. The cases
Yeah.
are still pending.
Still pending?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I wrote it down. You
I'm-
said that.
no,
they were
it's
not-
probably. I'm sorry. I probably was unclear. But thank you for the chance to clarify. These are all the cases that are in that backlog,
That
5-year.
pending.
Yeah.
All right. Then now I understand.
Sorry if I was unclear.
President. Sulara kalore nga kaya kung dasa tiya maklo to trail policy decisions and mal gina del mo alwang la leadership mal mongin mo understand da igel ragul talanting ityal decision el da oto ruling and cloud to trail boda understand the implications ringi maigel ramifications el direct el mo tuira sel mo decision el git kada madingat mo seblo Miguel for the longest time it's been our closest ally direct close kodul tuira Miguel ratokol talantingila economic development tergid mo or tela complement tergid ungila about understand da yegi del bekal talantingil tiang Ambassador, thank you for being here to answer some of our questions. Ambassador, my question is, I have a few questions. One is, what is the reason for U.S. to be seeking this kind of agreement with its allied countries, especially smaller island countries like Palau with a very minimal capacity to handle issues of asylum seekers and refugees? And my other question is this request somehow related to the ongoing U.S. Policy, this administration's policy to clean up all these illegal immigrants in the U.S. And as you mentioned earlier in your opening statement, you mentioned that there's over 1 million asylum seekers, and some of which might be some of these illegal aliens who are entering with claiming to be asylum seekers, but they have a different purpose. So what I'm worried about is once the U.S. start using Palau as a dumping ground for these so-called asylum seekers or refugees, that
turn out to be illegal immigrants, that would be a very serious problem for us once we accepted them. And so if we had to make this decision, we have to make sure that, you know, Palau will not be facing those kind of consequences. If you can answer those sort of like two questions.
Thank you. So to start with, I think you asked about what's the reason for this, you know, initiative by the United States, and it goes back to this administration's belief that our domestic asylum statutes are being abused. So I talked about over 1 million people in the pipeline waiting for their asylum hearings right now. No question, many, you know, I can't put the exact number on it, have a legitimate claim to asylum in the United States. We're not questioning those cases whatsoever. But it's this administration's feeling that others are gaming the system, that they get to the United States, make the claim, even if they don't have a fear of persecution, so that it allows them to then wait the 5 years for their hearing, at which time they can work and raise families or whatever in the United States. So the reason, so this administration has looked at U.S. immigration law, and it noted that that those people can stay legally in the United States while they await their hearing, except for the cases where another country would accept them, or us to transfer them to another country, but that country must guarantee similar protections, that they won't be shipped home against their will to possibly face persecution. So I, early on in this process, maybe even before I contacted the Palau government about whether or not you'd be willing to consider this, I said to Washington, Palau's a tiny country. They wouldn't be able to accept many of these people, even in the best case scenario. And they said the numbers that we might be sending to a small country such as Palau aren't really the main objective of this. What we want to do is to say to the asylum seeker, you have a choice to return to your home country or to one of these other countries that are willing to accept you. And I think the hope and the expectation is those who are not truly fearing persecution in their homeland would choose to return home. There's no expectation that Palau would ever accept large numbers, and we wouldn't, and you'd have the right to say no to any numbers, you know, that you don't want. So it would never become a dumping ground. Palau could just say, no, we don't, you know, we took 5 last year, we don't want 5 more this year, or, you know, whatever number, or 0, right, exactly. That's all, you know, that's all for Palau to decide. There's no obligation with this initial framework agreement. Did I answer? I think, was that all your questions?
Yes, I think you answered most of my question, but I understand there's other countries that the U.S. is also seeking a similar agreement with them, and I kind of look online and I find out that there's a number of countries that already signed this agreement.
Yeah, and I don't have all of them in front of me. I was on a call last week or 2 weeks ago with, I believe it was 8 other embassies that were, you know, showing consideration for this right now, and I've been given. There it was. We have. It says the United States already has signed STCAs with other countries such as Honduras and Guatemala, and I know there are others too. I don't have the list of all of them. Sorry to say.
Yeah, I know there's some Pacific islands, Vanuatu, Tonga, and other islands. We wanted to see what sort of understanding they have on this agreement before they. And my last question is, once, if supposedly Palau will enter into this agreement, is there a term limit for it, or is it going to be locked in?
I don't think there's a term limit, but there is a clause that says either side has the ability to terminate or suspend the agreement at any time by notifying the other party. And so 2 years from now, Palau says this isn't working for us, you just say we suspend the agreement.
Just a couple of follow-up questions, Ambassador. My understanding is that when a person seeks asylum, they file an application with the relevant government to which they seek protection from. And then the application is processed, and then once, assuming that the application is successful, then the person then achieves the status of a refugee, correct? You apply
To be honest, I don't know the technical.
Oh, okay. So
sorry.
that's sort of generally my
I
understanding.
think you're right. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, assuming that the United States government says no to an applicant to be for asylum protection in the U.S., or abandons the application for asylum in the U.S., or has been granted the status of a refugee, and all of those persons have been sent to Palau, do they then become strictly Palau government's problems?
Well, first, Palau could always say no, we don't accept them. So you wouldn't, if it's somebody you didn't want, you wouldn't have to.
No, I'm saying assume that there's been an agreement that Palau would accept them.
Then Palau
and either one of those three scenarios occur, then are they now Palau government problems?
the Palau would have the responsibility.
Okay,
for
that's
that.
the question. That's the answer I wanted to find out. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ambassador, what she's saying is right. Like it says, there are about 9 human rights treaties. Palau is only we've only accessed 2 of them, and like you said that on asylum is I'm not sure if we have signed it, but we haven't been accessed to it. Anyways, but it says that in one of those treaties, it says that if a country is not a member of, not a signatory to these treaties, and once they accept, let's say, the asylum seekers, then they have to apply their own laws to take care of the people that they were accepted. So what you're saying is according to the UN agreement.
But that's exactly it. In the case of Palau, the legal commitments that we're asking for are that you would provide equivalent temporary protection to what is in the UN conventions, and shoot, let me get the other one. There are 2 clauses. Do you know them offhand? One is to provide equivalent protection, and the other is that Palau agrees. Palau agrees that it would prohibit torture, cruel, and inhumane and degrading treatment and punishment while the person is here. Yeah. So Palau is not a member of these conventions, but we'd ask Palau to follow the human rights therein.
Ambassador, this is a question from Senator Inabo. She's asking, is there any incentives or what kind of benefits Palau can realize out of this agreement?
Well, that would be something for negotiation at the time when we're talking about specific individuals coming here. For example, Palau could say you're asking us to house 10 people, we need the United States to provide the rent money, or maybe, you know, help us construct something. At that point, though, the United States might come back and say, well, that's too expensive. We're no longer going to ask Palau. We might go somewhere else. So it would be a negotiation, but very, I shouldn't say very likely. It is a possibility that there would be financial benefits to Palau to take this, but I'm not making any guarantees. I'm not trying to lead anybody on.
If I could say something, Ambassador. Article 5, number 4. We could just refer to that. Is that something that's subject for negotiation, or is that the U.S.'s position in hard language? Because it clearly says there that there's nothing set forth in this agreement that shall be interpreted in any such way that commits the disbursement or allocation of funds.
Yeah, that's why I just said I can't commit anything. But the next sentence says it's subject to availability of funds and technical capacity of each party. So no question Palau could ask for funds and technical assistance, and it would just become part of that negotiation. But I'm not guaranteeing anything right now today.
Ambassador, the President of Palau said earlier that there's more work to be done with this agreement. And I think we all want to see all those work done before we approve this agreement, so we know what to do.
Okay, great. And if I can, I don't mean, I'll take questions as long as you all want, but before we finish, I have 2 questions I need to ask back to Washington, and let me know if there's anything else. One was on what is the status of these people when they come here? Is their asylum claim done in the United States, or are they still seeking? And the other one was the agreement does not say those who are in the U.S., and we want to include that it does say that. Is there anything else that I've missed that I need to ask of Washington to get clarification for you?
Ambassador, I think what we wanted to be able to do this morning is first get as much clarification on what the agreement says and what your intent is. I think, and be able to ask those questions. Now we'll discuss it, and we will come back to you with a list if we want to proceed. I think that would be the next step. So I just wanted to get everybody to have an opportunity to ask questions so that I don't serve as an intermediary. It's transparent. Whatever question they wanted to know, they've asked you, and then we can have now a discussion and then get back to you. That was the intent.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate that, and I just want to close by saying, you know, others in the room have already made this remark. The U.S.-Palau relationship is excellent right now. Palau has been a long time wonderful friend and partner on many issues. This is something I think that we should be doing in a spirit of cooperation. We're not trying to put anything on Palau that Palau doesn't want to do. We're just asking for help on a matter that's of high priority for this administration. We want to do it as transparently and as open. So if you have questions in the future that need clarification, please let me know, and we'll try to get all of your concerns addressed.
If we accept the question posed by Ngiraget Dongokla, the question asked by Ngiraget Dongokla is if we accept somebody and they come here, is there will there be an opportunity for us to return that person to you if we face any problem that we cannot continue to house them and keep them here? We want to be able, will there be an opportunity for us to give them back to the United States to take over the rest of the protection that they need? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. I'll put it on the list of ones to get full clarification on. My impression from what I have been told already is that would be something that you'd be able to negotiate in that second phase. Before you would say yes to accepting anybody, you might put in a clause saying, if Palau doesn't want them, in the future, can we return them to the United States? But I'll get 100% clarification for you.
Just one last thing I wanted to share, and I think the impression is we've seen Eswatini just on the news recently accepting criminals, right? Or the so-called asylum seekers. And I think the impression that's given is that we're going to be a dumping ground. There's 1.5 million asylum seekers, and there's a whole range of them. For example, the ones that are running away from South Africa because they are having problems and they're actually well-to-do, but they can't live in South Africa because there's a lot of violence and their lives are under threat. So there's a whole mix of people. I mean, is that a fair statement? And there's people that just want to go to the United States, claim asylum, but they're actually just looking for a job, right? Just like the Bangladesh people that show up here, they're looking for work, or the Filipinos, and so forth, right? I mean, we're talking about a whole range of people.
Right, exactly. And is this working? The like I said before, the it's the view of this administration that of these 1.4 million people who are awaiting their asylum hearings, there are those legitimate cases, and I'm not going to try to guess how many of those 1.4, but nobody is questioning their right, to get asylum. But this administration feels there are others who are gaming the system, and some of those people are going to be criminals. Some are going to be, hardworking professionals, and maybe that's who ends up in Palau. I kind of avoid who it's going to be because it's all hypothetical. But Palau, in that round where we would be discussing with Palau, will you take this individual? Palau would be able to say no to any criminal, anybody it didn't want to accept, and would be able to say yes to those who, Palau might feel would be welcome here.
I can just give an example because I know of one asylum seeker that actually came to Palau, married a Palauan, ended up in the U.S., eventually became a U.S. citizen. Dr. Nicolescu, the Mala Christian. So he was in Romania. He had a problem because of the change in government in Romania, ran away. But, they could be doctors. They could be any kind of people. So I'm just, sharing because I think a lot of times we just think that it's only criminals that we're talking about. But there are people that have problems in their countries, and they're trying to. And it was actually Senator McCain that helped Dr. Nicolescu, become a U.S. citizen back there. So anyway, this is just, but anyway.
Mr. Ambassador, there was a matter of contract workers in Palau. They got their work permits. They were contracted to work in Palau. The U.S. Embassy in Palau allowed them to go to the United States. And I've heard a rumor that some of these people that you're who are seeking asylum are some of these people who came from Palau with contract workers. So that's another concern, Mr. President, of the notary. So because the OEK did file a formal complaint against the U.S. Embassy, and they said it's none of your business what we do with our borders. So this would be an about face, but then again, to remind that we're not we're very pro-U.S. So as a message to Washington, D.C., because of some political differences, we get blamed for being anti-American, and that's not right. You see our but please note that contract labor qualified workers for the industries. Thank you.
Thank you. And just on that point about the contract workers, that happened like right before I got here, and so I'm not going to take credit or not. But on that point, so we did hear about it, and even before I got here, we started taking steps. It's much harder for a contract worker in Palau now to get a visa to the United States. We recommended them to go to their country of origin to apply. I don't know anything about them claiming asylum when they get there, but okay. But we have tightened that up. I want to assure everybody.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you, everyone.
Ngirturong. Ngirturong. Me dako radio lungul telgi be dangi maral me edelut ada du.
Pues ang man lang mo kamang la meeting hindi ala make briefly summarize artiya lang armada dosa adri, and then of course kita artiya la adu la se ngara what should be the next step. Kutulak mereka sulil milsa time ambassador ogera igel question. Aktirik mo realize was egal question ko miya nang masadra second step kita diri nga first step. Agreement nga madada adi masadra basically was open asylum for discussion. Le next step kada masadra sa alsum kada ako ngeng intada kengertir. And technically next step ang sa dari mula di men dari den morsel point tel deka imo lada daging to me, ako mas agreement to there's a first step. The first step the sign niya adilas kariya Miguel while the olo oti selungil intent rito kasi kadat makaloro labantir. Detail actually mo accept tararat would be something that we would consider in a separate agreement. That's my understanding. Is that right, Dan? This is so. Tiagora agreement, and it's a non-binding agreement technically. Yeah, and one of the things that I think we want to make sure is that it's truly non-binding. And it kind of sets out parameters that if we want to go to the next step, it kind of points in the direction of what our demands will be. Like, for example, compensation. We only want to accept doctors that are asylum seekers, for example. I mean, these are things that we could put in. Or, I mean, the other side of a coin. But, the first step, that's basically what this agreement in front of us is. Kadongel mutir adado. Dia kal commit kita ma anything. Saya orang understanding ramam, but dia kal suara ramang sa the swivel giral say.
President, hindi ako malungil kung sa na duliti lang. And kasi non-binding. Di ka po Article 4, explain Section 2 Article 4.
In the event of a conflict, interpretation or implementation, parties commit to resolve such matters through dialogue or diplomatic channels.
Ako kasi tiagid agreement lang agid misi Michelle but ado tiagid el diplomatic channel kada follow agid gida angara amli ado emot mok sulang
Kita malangal tangat tengari arterul man batako kadal adar alla alo banggit. Maria senator Nakamura ma angiragit. Mak ngamal diultur adar alla alsel memsa adar yan non-binding ma makaram te. Adolto ergidar alsel ndi sel amle first el tingin ambassador. Tia di basically opener sel te allo asing sedar adaduri. Of course kami amrela di mender kami lo ase. For example, so $100 million sel amalara it's another tiada kalsi gong yering eleng kada mor mu legal condition gid mangana kada
ngada kulgosi president se longerul face nga adim ko tiagid el got el face ra contract gid am saudri
kabora article 5 go to number 3.
Presidente, direi che l'agire del mal mongil ada du rogo ile kita leaders tel meeting kita leadership rablur belaw mong gire del gelo armu de mal mongil ada du gire del lotir ga klil bai wasei mang lenchep edel di el ang kada kai get malu be kada mal mol mural da du mang kada bai agera mergi del wasei kada ko ngir tiang kada mal mol mural da du ndiang mandi el ang yang ba merek letial babel bod saying ringi ya mol mol mural da du mal sum kada tibil waseng ndiak dol mol mural da du len ngaringa igelu ulen ndiak dol mol direk gire del lungil bod ka da ngiringi ma lak dol mol mal masawder tel contract leng idere kada ko ngir tel contract mang aldo amal mol malu ben dia mang dia ka dol mol mural da du ding ngila bol blok tak mergi del waseng la pugungil pastria telira adar olbil maru pugul belaum bol durgaul waseng president lenkaya tergi dem agi ko ngey magamul mol mural da du ndia mang kesub di amrigel waseng dia
abela di imorel mamrikela imorel magara mo imorel belau agot tendigit al adadu etibira tal tokoi eogrira mrigel megat adadu ega morel belau putingel ba belau el agi tel dong ogor tiang abela dia udah siam letel agrer el altu tau edo sada tinggal belum dia agrer baisai ngakading artia sai aku ser ngogol girel belau dirga katka meter gidal mortiang ala kabodongil atado balsugong dia kadito kotor amrigel di gote katabagut bakleo lolet emoga otangai esola emgatado gura taramlo dirga kabodabora di tel wasai bar other girl belum makarang bar other girl belum amrigel ako te meta TV ratlong le sa meta lomal may tolmol mral do lo bangkel amrigel eto terga klisel soal belau dia dol kita kerja kera human rights enti go te kwasai tiang ungir belau dia bodoh be rablo eto mdasura abelau ba angar bata klub sera blur belau bawal sebele presiden tador ko di tiang eto ada du urat long letru era abol sebele mengata du kita ma amerikel ma bebir rablo enti tiang aguk tobat letele la government tirga gidar adro olbil bagau oi sel go pam dulli lo ya kator amerikel alla ekato triklia atingira ruptois di tungu bera guktik tebela orgit ako se halit alalakla ebot ada du eto tipira alta tal bela to mata du gora arme per rablo kodom dasura atletelel bela ra diakdil kitre el altaim kodom meser ngira arngal gel bela ul maran mera tarak labsain
Diam sula raklai tila ul kado meeting relang kadamla rongasi on tila merigel mela kadamala udah swira arbek laat luasay ngara next step per dolari. Mende ko na sa amol ko rin yung somil krubukul belan mo الموت مليتر تلو دا شوي ما دان قدقلت مقرلا لوك سما دايل راودين رجيد مالو مول دا شوي الموت السيد الموت الميم قد عددو تدخل فاينل عددو دغه تايم لاين
President Selgureng sa alda ame kung uyurtial agreement ta Miguel Dilo Ambassador Amerikel tial domes ringil agreement ta ngar madadre elang awal agel duduk mang agreement to agree. In other words, agel wal substantive terms of agreement tergila mal soal mo kang ariya obligere al tutaw adi akal ngara al seltia. Hindi ko mesa ngariya bebil, for example, Article 3, they sound like substantive terms. Yang wal orobra abelaul was in that mundial sa emrur tiagi del toy. Why say? Mundial sa return it regal at once lalami. Bakoram da sul was galelungil the lutel di amended tiagi del draft agreement ng armadat. El mal di mo simple terms ringil was kad agree el mo adadu gid mamrikel. Lista kada preserve segi del lungil del leong rigid mamrikel da kad dulu asendiak. Why say? Emergo ay gigi del substantive terms mo subject ra hilakal agreement. El waigel ngara subsidiary compact. Mensadan mal me mesube o mesel wase mesel durgi del wase tiragi del ada ego. Ya kada mo tong oklo mesel wase check ay gigi del background check sertil blal kat moklam rigel. Yo mesel wase tirgat the professional sa lubet ngaraul men soril lolingit asylum rablu ramrigel. O mes aigel baby ratling tingil emergo moseb edel dong okle analyze lo wase tial agreement ng ungil merga mamal uben dia ka maigel manghiter gidel dom das yung dia ka suad go ya despide amrigel mes edel lorel mol el subaklil morsel soad mu pongil malaring. Sige da ko al suegal sa kalod sin mera.
Presidente ngakadiak adarala mak tireg loger ngir ruba kal ma senator Nakamura kabortsel article 5 sel article 5 sel 1 say this agreement may shall enter into force upon signature. Disel borselong erur ngeng wasay either party may terminate or suspend this agreement at any time by notifying the other party. Mengla sepeda ada do mangrang hindi sepeda notify til wasen diagim kay mang ngaria open ngara alsel tiang nga dia kadrala hindi tel agreement tawayal open bol sepeda el mutual further discussion mangrang maulak kwa sial sumen dia kalsomya da do ramrigel elak da saying tial contract malaka dongot adu bolum rek len aguren sergi den ndial swade yettek da wase dogram mung ndial fel mor amerikel ndial fel mor adr belal sum kadangar telom terar ade wase ndial swade ndik da mere de lutel adu len ndial swade tom leba arungul amerikel ade kal gerrat tirgeda ka dia katara time balal matmal larung ulam rigera any negotiation rablulal.
Adi lungi la klut di answer selo logornya senator Baules.
Oh ya tiolo nit malak di debate radong ule de ngakadiak adrala mong.
Oh. Andia ka debate ngungil til al pointer al molgoringi. Hindi so kalmo mdelo sing ngariya tele del dire sa el chance tia ay gal to ngara sel tia lo bendia.
Tia open.
Oh, sige da kulgoring.
Yeah, it's up to us.
Oh.
كذا طريقة ضد تبدأ تيجي هذا المو. أيها كذا بلا لادر سا أمريكا المي. أمباسادور أديم ليل مي clarify سومانيا question يد and then. Oh.
Okay. Hindi sa lulgoring ba Paulus ha.
President, dabei may kulngit, era dangatya di discuss nga niya other OB ma executive branch mo mama kuk nga Council of Chiefs. Dr. Klia imortoy, dia kata kongir tial babir at that time. Pwede kongir masin kamamak mo ata to for them discuss I get detail concerns kamamat sa better mo address. Nung ako nito ka ba better mo instead kita makatatar ng talo meeting nung severa agree masin kimol kaya mo why a spokesperson ng government belaw diakal ka ma'am diakal daw ng kaya executive branch by don't need to come up with an ideal better mo magi sumukya imol babier mo na atar miligek mas mama open mo discuss ke why al kora concern ka ma'am and more second phase tel negotiation tel babier Sedi last way.
O yung malung lakti soal nga mal lek adrala ngiragit di ka sel article 5 or sel section 3 meski datte ledel amended ada sen wai sen kam iwe mo idi ka adrala ma
Iraget yal agreement ako mesering self-executing. Tiada sana rin elanging sibil to das ko gira klugo lola par adal me. Siwan dori. Ya terms na alsela second round ra ka po the subject del mora both parties ako ngay malun niya. So I think yung sel lolo nga president ra kama masay. Kada kung entertain at yang further a discussion with or kada more follow a timeline or stealing although di a timeline hindi torre so I don't know how diplomatic hindi how to tell the other American as hindi ka mamo spera a close time that dia kan lebih tutoy ndo sa siya dal ang wile ngilagay dal dia self executing. Ya, si Juan Dori, sana si Juan Dori tengah clue.
President, sige daw ulmak isulol ko niya kora confusing tialeng sel guren singo sekada it's an agreement to agree I get substantive terms I agree in May hindi nga rin bebir terms lang tial kora tela substantive sel article 3 leng mulu asen diakal sa ela belur belaw wasen kongel diakal ball return trigal as malsukum transfer tangoy titril longo sa trial si 130 wasel olgornya nakamura metiang yang kita mal itu tidak akan lagi mo kata basically kata mau melihat ringi maul mak proposal was segalel algora dimo o kada malas mal emisir segi del melihat terah mongara segi del algornya senator Nakamura
kada Mr. Sel Article 1, Paragraph 2. Sing arab lo.
Article 1. Oi. Okay.
Engiragin ngalil de kadra hindi kami sa sil. Kamu sa sigil arigol mikam sa ngi. En kwasya belau shall not allow that shall not return.
President, haladik to reiterate, I think maybe abayed se as titadi to swek dingak. Mlame ongit. Leadership bela mo decide se at this time en diak. Hindi agim prohibit ra gidel muter continue al adul lo sigira mo regal tablol bulu au sa lel bulu. Kada ko to asa el time en diak gore din diak al tomer selte el del mutel al adul gire lo sigira mo regal tablol bulu. Diak, aku si instead ra mo na Article 1 ma Section 2 ma 3, a decision lang I think gira say, are we willing to entertain a TEL agreement or no? If we're not willing to entertain a TEL del MSOIs, let's tell them. Malakalongi rigid.
President.
Did for
President. Tadi udah swek dah kalau lutus sama rugul belau. Aktio meset tel babier, indah sebegel konge ni. Akpai di soal bes murah ratam lek kosen dia anda jangan sama May, unless ngariak mu ngaral Christmas present and mail change our mind terkemam. Dia aktimal ko ya, segum aknak mu. Dia kat sebed long titiri tiga dia dan tri adal May. That's my point. Dia kat tol dia sebed kumasen dia kali ngari yang malungil dia sebed kumasen dia kali.
Presidente, diregal ako. President, diregal komen stringil nara constitution egi dindia ka mandate ra olbira rula edia kala diregal asylum seekers madum tigai refugees. Say diregal part egi diregal kadat makli maulum dia ka say entertain rawat yang Ali. Yeah, they are more entertain some kind of agreement to tell it lang. Unless you have more change that Title 33, Title 13, and more accommodate the immigration again at himself, they're still Tora Rior Matora, they have a lot of take. The regular domestra, a last milkat mokal tiang, Gadim Nora, diplomatic principles, they give them temporary riggers. Dindim laka la al gaberti. So to enter into the agreement to tell their Allah al-kwasing guideline it was a moral agreement as a way the matiak. Trigonometry kasi mbail ate led rule Allah rela. Kami bay darur Allah al-girel tell was saying. Assume they are the party to those conventions la UN. America impose your sergit and the regal degal uding khadmagarang. It's like we gongel Morsel Convention la UN. Through America and din degal pa UN ding effective rigid America margo. That's the same way of saying this. Mga mesel wasing America lang usel UN and McLaughlin lang imposing it. Mga agwilo banggal America and din dekat what the part la UN. Ay gida clause bay luud ay gida mut mal. Bay medreli luud. Nigire la yang boda ka ngir rule kwasi bangya out the house. Ma senate ma president. Madabore ay gida togora
refugee ma asylum ngot. Kita dia kata stop rangi dil adil me apply me toktang belau or anything mun dia kata dia kata dadu ngasim lendiak segi dil udul gabe lagi.
deactivate delegate ndi memlakal tegi da ule bad amen dal ud el accommodate taiga kita dia ud in the first place kita dia member sel asylum badi tangar segi del marko
Ma ulu qadru lal udul wase o india.
lengarat lamalla dia katal mal rela
Au ul mar bigger someday.
dia kali sego kodel issue lang mabasel me tia kita masadara ngodel issue me kadabai di decide gid rogul wasing kadako nge India sebagai presiden melolu usul mol rulia apabil ngedel lungil diplomatic letter el mor amrigel wase ndiagim gengertiang bebas kemamatay mel lo meserngi rada longolam le ko meserngi de gerdi mel mol makat ngati de di mol mol mergi
nga awila da aklila siya lerel me mal sebed lo ase kumro la lerel rubugul bela u lerel senate lerel house el me aga gida igel concern sir kumbi ma ulen tikaliya yakuda ge mro koru la lerel gid el mora amrigel lo ase tikida position
Presidente, qua di rimande udole Presidente Tiagi. Sera omong ado la kampakte kulus pe tege dat tokoy. Senne utki tial belu. Sel lo mo titra adal mel lo ki Tiagi dal kora samwat. Dagal rif sel ne utki. Sel gol gol nga se nga tora belu. Madi bay tra adal dagal lo dangay. Amal arakla total amount of dollars. Malmuta sel tem ngam la mamsada tora udo. Which is hindi ka tayo ng atan mo ngayon. Maulo ma kung da sa tokra adak mas medol ko dityan. Malakabalo spell adal san lo tam tratokol mo amen dal utyal bulu. Maakamoday tra adal unda hindi ka swet bulu. Lugarin magdiswa ka duli sige de Mr. President sel ne utsin mo lugarin. Siya ako to close to tren makunda sa gida di follow sa igid.
Yeah, kita gongelo ase sel dungura valiur bela ay ngarba valiur bela mang tiada kalau sa daw daw ler chung kadam sa daw daw udi ul oy I think the first step bela singe amrege la adimle sorry sel wase sedra dadu le of course I think el ambassador we probably won't send anybody to Palau tia gidi mosperi uk negotiation tactic kamamra igal baby rablo but anyway se internal artir mung kita decide which seems like we have a consensus wase como te daba blingu rubolo bela te daba blingir kami house te daba blingir el may ikada entertaining musuba se delegate lo nga ka dire kalombra to lo ase dia change ra lu da ungil but hindi rin makita daw sa opportunities rather like asylum seekers. Ang berbela ng asylum seekers, temel me uryor. So if there's doctors that are there like Dr. Nicolescu, and I would entertain myself care bela. I mean so those are things that maybe we should consider. But I think our first step was the way the agreement stands, and they got and then hindi kada stop rate ala mutra dado why say da muloni regal proposal ara angirage adama yeah lang. Amla mongil.
Di absulang Presidente. A joint resolution, may agi kong iringi. Mandiwan apa bilangir lang. Hindi akal babilangi ul House of Delegate talngod, ama kumamal babilang malngod. Lendi al kita gira makalurior.
Di babiye, tengamin, di resolution.
Eh?
Di babiye.
Dadara resolution madidul mangara olla malel.
Okay. Malungil uruma lerer amen era Tuesday na next week. Okay. Kitial na tibir mong kumdirula lerer Monday mas kakara Tuesday. Saben? Okay. Okay. Saben? Tuesday? Oh, Malmer Amerigala, Vice President, tungo bang? O bay ka ra house, ata?